following video shows a writing expert editing a real student's personal statement. Read the essay first and then follow along the edits to learn how to create an effective personal statement.
So, one of the first things that I noticed about this essay that I love is how specific it is to the person who wrote it. You can't imagine any other person writing this exact essay. Not just because it mentions a specific high school or specific family backgrounds, but it's about a specific combination of experiences that come together in a way that's very personal to this person. So that's one thing. Another thing that I noticed straight off is that this essay is very memorable. It has a lot of kind of strong imagery, a lot of like fun little moments that will stick in a reader's mind, particularly like that last moment with the funny story about drinking the blood of Christ. It's really important to try to make your personal statement memorable because when admissions officers come to read it, they're going to have to remember it later in order to advocate for you as a person, in order to try to imagine the person behind the rest of your application, all your numbers, all your like statistics. So yeah, let's just go through it. Starting with the beginning, the first sentence. I think this is a really nice hook because it takes you right into what this essay is going to be talking about. And it's also kind of an interesting thing to say, becoming the youngest possible chalice bearer in my Episcopal church. That's kind of like a little entertaining image. I can start to imagine this person really well. I can start to see their voice coming through. It's important that the opening sentences of your essay point to what the rest of your essay is about. I think often students will kind of start like very zoomed out or start with something and then they like switch expectations later in the essay. It's important to remember that admissions officers read these essays very quickly. Sometimes they'll have like 5 minutes or 10 minutes tops to read them, which means that you don't want to give them any sort of opportunity to get lost, which is why it's great to even start right from the beginning with that very specific topic. Another thing is that it sets us well in time right at the beginning. On my 16th birthday, this essay isn't starting way too early. It's hard to try to talk about your childhood in detail in a personal essay because when people are looking at you for college, they're more interested in like, what are you like now? How have you changed since you were younger? So this next part strikes me initially as being very hard to read because it's this huge paragraph. So something that can help right off the bat is just to cut it into littler paragraphs. And another thing that can be really helpful with cutting paragraphs is that when you have a sentence start a new paragraph, that sentence kind of gets a new weight. It becomes like emphasized a little bit so that you can have the different meanings in what you're saying kind of come out more clearly. I guess I'm going to cut here. So we've got this paragraph about religion class, being a non-Catholic student in a Catholic school. That's a really interesting kind of unique position to highlight. I think this line about having an expectation and finding it was wrong is a really good example of a way to show personal growth in an essay. I think that you have to make sure that you support what you're saying. So here, this writer says that they found the classes to be enlightening, and then they go on to talk about what specifically was enlightening. I think that they could have done more to kind of bring us more vividly into the scene. It also kind of depends on what their academic interest is. Maybe they don't have a super intellectual interest in religion, but even if not, that's okay. I think here, since they're saying that the classes were important, it would be good to have some more detail about like what it was like learning these things in these classes. They say like some of the best class times, but they don't really say what it felt like for them specifically, what about these things really affected them. I like this idea about looking forward to the future, kind of connecting it to a longer journey. So I love this paragraph because I think it pulls off something that's kind of hard to do, which is to talk about your family history in a way that still feels like it's about you instead of just about your family and people before you were born. It's also got some really interesting imagery. The Travels of St. Thomas is very interesting. Having little like proper noun details like that can really help draw vivid images very quickly, as long as they're relevant, of course, and as long as you're using them correctly. I love kind of this description of the different kinds of religions coming together. I love kind of this idea of being too young to understand something and just absorbing the message, and that allows for the nuance later of showing what it's like when this writer is older and they're able to understand things more. This next paragraph, this kind of paragraph is really important because when you're talking about the later years, you're talking about personal growth, and you're also talking about what things are like for you now, which is going to be kind of the more interesting insights, the deeper insights. I think this is cool. I like how this writer uses the word awesomeness. I think it's important to like let your 17 or 18, however old you are, to let that voice come through. And it's important to strike a balance in tone between being professional and also having that kind of more casual voice, because you want to remember that like this personal essay is a point where you want to talk human to human to the admissions officer, but you also don't want to be so casual that it seems like you aren't recognizing kind of the seriousness of what's happening here, that this is like really important. Another thing I really like about this paragraph is like just the mentions of history and culture. I can tell that this is a person who's very interested in learning, who retains things and integrates them into her understanding of the world, who kind of thinks about the connections between one's culture and one's values. So here, this person talks about what specific perspective they bring to their own community, which is also a really nice thing to talk about in a college essay. You'll notice that a lot of colleges' supplemental questions will ask about a particular community you're in, or they'll ask about like, what will you bring to our college community? It's a common kind of question. And this is a nice answer because this person is talking about how their unique set of experiences from like their personal religion, their religion in the context of their high school, their family history, their understanding of that family history, they're bringing all that together to talk about how they come to the communities that they enter. I think that this is the main paragraph where the reflection happens, and that's a good rule of thumb. If you're the kind of person who kind of struggles with writing reflection that feels natural, I know I definitely am, it can help to like kind of leave the reflection to later in the essay. Like first try just kind of telling the story, which is much of what this person did. And then if you can like tell the reflection pretty concisely toward the end, it's an easier way to make it more specific, to avoid falling into big generalizations or trying to like make big conclusions about the world that you could never be expected to be able to make in this context. I think that these reflections are like, I like them because of how grounded they are in the experience. I think that they are still a little bit vague, like the sentence, "I've learned to both question and defend my beliefs," is fine. I feel like many students could say that about many different things that they've learned from. I think I can pick out other more interesting ideas from this essay, like the idea of seeing faith reflected in the larger world, in other faiths, and also in contexts that aren't inherently religious. I'm also interested in this person talking about being a peer minister and what it's like to promote tolerance and strengthen community in a high school context. One thing to note is like, you don't want to start to summarize your activity list in your personal statement. So it's good that this person didn't like mention like all of their religious related activities or anything like that. But it does make me wonder, because this person is kind of highlighting their role in their high school, I would like them to talk more about what that actually looks like and kind of what that has taught them. So then coming to the end, something I would definitely recommend is ending with either an image or a nice phrasing, something that kind of ties things together and also speaks for itself a little bit. You don't, this is a showing instead of telling kind of thing. A good way to kind of cement all the nuances of your essay in the reader's mind is to have there be an example at the end, where you don't have to super explicitly kind of explain the big conclusions that you're making, but instead can just sort of give that last bit of personal observation. I like the idea of connecting the whole journey, how this person talks about this story from their childhood and how that ritual of drinking the wine on Sundays is carried over to now. I like in this last sentence the idea of having come to see faith a certain way, having come to like kind of make peace with this person's identity in a certain way. I think that I would want to push this reflection a little bit more, because right now this person is talking about serving, connecting, and growing and understanding, and it doesn't feel like that exactly connects to the themes of earlier. I think sometimes with reflection it can be better actually to go narrower. So if this person could think more about what the stories about their family and their high school context really meant earlier, and then have that last sentence reference those more specifically. And And yeah, I think just one last overall note I would say is that I really like how this person has managed to fit so many different ideas into one essay. I think you definitely can do that when the connection between them all is clear, which I think it is. But I do think that the organization of this essay feels a little strange and a little jumpy. They talk about their role in the religious community, and they talk about the high school, and they go back to the family, and it's kind of unclear like where we are in time at certain points. But yeah, in general, this is a really lovely essay. It's unique. The person's voice comes through. The person's interests are really clear. I feel like I can feel their passion for this topic through this. I can feel how meaningful it is to them. And I think they've done a really nice job reflecting maturely about these different dynamics. And yeah, that's kind of an overview of how I would revise a personal essay.